Okay, it's time to try to take down the toughest challenge in the entirety of Bayonetta, the Lost Chapter Angel Slayer. Now, basically, the way the Angel Slayer works is that you face, there's about 9 verses in each, well, there's 9 battles in each verse, and there's 5 verses in total. And basically, it's a marathon gauntlet. So you have got to try and last on what health you have, and because I don't believe you can use items, your only way of succeeding is to have to manipulate the Star of Dinatea's taunt an enemy to restore your health, but pulling that off is quite difficult. Now, I am preparing you now. I'm not going to get to the end of the Lost Chapter. I'm just not that good at Bayonetta. Because basically the first verse is played on normal difficulty, verses 2 and 3 are played on hard difficulty, and verses 4 and 5 are played on non-stop infinite climax difficulty. And you have no option about changing this, that's part of the challenge. And I'm just not good enough at this game. Now, there are people who are spectacular at this game and can beat the Lost Chapter under extreme conditions. I will provide a link to someone performing that feat, so you can actually see the entirety of the Lost Chapter, but yeah, I'm simply not skilled enough at the game to be able to pull that off. Maybe once I've finally beaten hard mode and non-stop infinite climax mode, I might have developed the skills and speed to be able to face down the Lost Chapter, but until then, it's not quite going to happen. Now, I don't know why Pillow Talk isn't in its fully charged form at this point in time. That would probably make things a lot easier, but oh well. Now I guess whilst we have this rather long segment of gameplay that I've not really got a whole lot to say about, because I failed rather badly at succeeding at the Lost Chapter. One thing I will point out is that when we unlocked it, the position that Bayonetta was in is the same one that you see in Devil May Cry. Specifically, it's the one that Trish does, and also it's the one that's in the logo, which is just great. Now, in one of the many blog posts that Platinum Games put out for Bayonetta, Eijiro-san, who's one of the animators who did most specifically Golem and Fortitudo, he also did kind of most of the enemy animations, and something that he admits is that the enemies that he creates are almost like children to him. So when you see someone playing against one of them, unconsciously roots for the enemy instead of the player. It's just rather funny. And then kind of one day, one of the co-workers played against an enemy that was pretty much done and thought it was a bit too easy, and then ended up getting torn apart. And then dropped the bomb on him that, don't you think this is a bit too weak sauce? So, yeah. I mean, the main thing about the combat is that they wanted it to be anxiety-packed and exhilarating, but didn't want to make the enemy attacks super hard as a prank. So if you have an enemy that has nothing going for it other than powerful attacks, then all the enemy does is cause stress. So basically, kind of, when you do enemy behaviour, you've got to insert a bit of a break into it. So there's a precursor animation that screams, "I'm going to attack you," so that then you, the player, can make the call as to what you want to do and perform your own action. Whether you risk it in attack or go the safe route and dodge, and that kind of fairness is what you want to go for. I mean, mainly the main thing that you have the problem with is the attack precursors, which is difficult to figure out. Because if you make them too obvious, then you eliminate any anxiety. But if you make them so difficult that only the hardcore will pick up on them, then you lose the sense of exhilaration. So that was something that he enjoyed. Now, the producer, Yusuke Hashimoto, gave a glimpse on the enemy designs in the game. And while he was the producer for Bayonetta, he was previously a designer and in charge of special effects. So when they first started development, got caught up in the idea that the enemies are angels, and drew sketches of them that he showed to Kamiya-san. And he seemed to take a liking to them, and basically Hashimoto ended up designing about 70% of all the enemies in Bayonetta. And he'd love to say, "And here are those sketches," but they're gone. Because he threw away all the sketches other than the ones that made the final cut. And here is me making use of the Star of Dinatea, and doing a rather poor job at it. Now, another blog post was done by Kai-san, who wrote about animating Bayonetta, which I think was a rather interesting task. It's basically the thing that, in an action game, the main things that you must bear in mind are response and sense of exhilaration. So it's expressing the gathering and releasing of one's power in such a small number of frames, which is ridiculous. And this is the first game that Kai-san's done with Kamiya-san since Beautiful Joe. So basically, when they first started Bayonetta, Kamiya-san wanted some test motions where punches and kicks were released in a single frame. And so enamoured with that prototype that even kind of when the blog post was written, he was just like, that version was really good. Kai-san kind of wanted to scream, "Well, then you don't need any animation." But yeah, so it's basically all about kind of having the time in very brilliantly done. There's also a blog post done by Kenichiro Yoshimura, who modelled Bayonetta, or at least one of the modellers for Bayonetta. And basically, kind of, the main thing that they focused on was how best to express the character that Mari Shimazaki had drawn, with the long limbs and the small head. As well as kind of all the feminine lines and curves and everything. And had to look at many foreign models for reference, and there are a lot of people actually purporting like Bayonetta, despite a lot of people being just like, Nobody looks like that in reality. No, there are people, which is quite funny. And one of the main things that focus on is the face, because basically Bayonetta is meant to be attractive yet dangerous, and they want to get that across without overdoing it. She's beautiful but can't be pandering, which are really hard to pull off. So there were basically lots of sketches that were worked on, and since Bayonetta is obviously a woman, I made sure to consult with Mari Shimazaki about how her makeup would look to get it right. So obviously as a guy we don't really know that much about that kind of stuff. Also, when designing Bayonetta, Mari Shimazaki, well, she wrote an entire blog post on that point as well. And it actually took a full year to reach the final design for Bayonetta, which is quite difficult. So they have the three main traits, so it's female lead, modern witch, uses 4 guns, and kind of that had to lead on to what was going to be the design. And since Bayonetta is a witch, the theme colour had to be black. And the other special part is kind of the long hair wrapping around her body. And generally, when a female character appears in an action game, her limbs are often thin and, well, seen thin and short. So that's why she tried to make Bayonetta more appealing as an action game character by adjusting her proportions and extending the limbs. So it's very kind of interesting seeing all of the specifics, which is quite cool. Also, the beehive hairdo is something that she really wanted to give to Bayonetta. Because basically, as she's a witch, she needed something, but a pointy hat, it couldn't really be that. It needed to be something elegant. But apparently Kamiya-san didn't really care either way. And the other thing that was included were the glasses. Kamiya-san really did push for, largely because he was aiming to differentiate her from other female characters, but also to give her a sense of mystery and intelligence. Of course it could just be because Kamiya-san likes girls with glasses. But there you go. And now, here we have a fight against Jeanne, and this is her first variant, so she's not as difficult as she could be. But fighting against Jeanne does get more of these as you go along, which it gets quite difficult, because we have one Jeanne here. I believe in the next verse we have 2 Jeannes at one point. And as you get later on you have 3 Jeannes, and it's just like, lummin' heck. It's just very difficult.
Bring it.
Now, another Bayonetta blog post that I always found quite fun was the one that Kudo-san did on special effects. I mean, basically, kind of, you can see when Bayonetta just does her normal attacks, they all seem really powerful and awesome. That's because of all the special effects that are put on. And that's all down to the special effects team. I mean, it's easiest to see when you have it all split up, so then you have it without special effects and with special effects, and it's just so much more awesome and exhilarating when you have all these special effects. But there's an interesting little conversation that Kudo-san put in about how to illustrate damage in Bayonetta. So basically I'm going to try and show this with my excellent acting skills. So we have Kamiya-san, who is just like, hey Kudo, when Bayonetta gets damaged, Kudo's just like, yeah! Then it's just like, we should do something special with that. Yeah, we should. Maybe something like Okami's hit effects, where flower petals flew off. Yep, that's a great idea. So Bayonetta would use a rose, of course. But okay, but it's damage, right? So isn't there supposed to be blood? If it isn't pretty, then it isn't Bayonetta. Even the blood that flows out of her body can turn into a rose with magic. Whoa. She just goes, whoa! Yeah. You know... Whoa! And what resulted from that conversation is the hit effects that you see in the game now. And I just love it. It's great. If there's one thing that you can take from Kamiya-san is that he's very honest and a really awesome guy. As you can probably tell, I am a big fan of his work. And I just love that because basically he responds to practically everyone on Twitter. I mean, he can get a bit antsy in the fancy when people ask repeat questions, which they do all the time. But he does try and answer everybody's questions, and I think that's just admirable. Even though he's still working really hard on the games that he's working on, he still has time out to give fans kind of the information that they want to know. Of course, he is a massive tease and a massive troll. But even then, it's just great that he does that. Because I can't really think of any other game developers that pay so much attention to their fans on Twitter. And to be honest, a lot of you can learn a lot of information. I mean, I learnt about, well, the truth about Cereza and the truth about, well, the voice actress for the matriarch from Hideki Kamiya himself on his Twitter. I mean, I'm particularly really happy with learning about the Jenny O'Hara as the matriarch, because Kamiya-san actually I asked him one day, and he said, "Oh, I'll ask JP about it," and then he didn't respond for a day or so, and I was just like, "Oh, he's probably forgotten by this point. It's fine." And then he did actually get back to me, and I was just like, "Oh, thank you, Kamiya-san. That's just really nice." I don't know, there's just something very awesome being able to talk to someone who you do look up to over Twitter, and them actually respond to you and give you what you want to know. It's just awesome. And I have to, I like how I've managed to ramble over this fighting for about 20 minutes now. I guess that's what happens when you have so much information on Bayonetta. I mean, I haven't even covered everything that I could talk about, because there's still loads of blog posts. There's ones on weapon design, there's one on designing Luca and Enzo and Rodan, there's the sound design, more on the music, the weapons, more on the world. There's just so much to talk about with Bayonetta, and there's no way that I can physically cover it all. And even then, we haven't heard everything that we can hear about Bayonetta, because Kamiya-san is still doing his developer commentaries. I mean, as I'm recording this part, they've only just started doing the last chapter of the game. Whether by the end, by the time this is released, Kamiya-san will have finished his direct commentary, I don't know. But I mean, I learned so much information from those direct commentaries, and I wish I could have included more of the information. But because of my recording schedule, I've had to try and watch what ones I can beforehand to get the information to be able to use, which is rather stressful, that trying to watch them get the information down and then literally recording the commentary for those chapters the next day. I wasn't able to do it for all of them, so there's a lot of information that I've not been able to discuss. I mean, basically I'd say, if you want to find everything out about Bayonetta, look at the Platinum Games blog posts, watch Kamiya-san's director commentaries. I mean, there's loads of other stuff as well, because Kamiya-san did a bunch of discussions with JP, answering people's questions on, I think it was PGTV, or PG Break, or whatever it was. I mean, there's even one which discusses construction of one of the trailers, and the amount of kind of detail and information that they put out about Bayonetta is just brilliant. I mean, they did the same, well, they tried to do the same for Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and although they didn't cover it completely, they didn't do nearly as much information as they've put out about Bayonetta, there's still a lot of information about everything. Now, unfortunately, I don't really know how to use Rodan effectively. If I'd managed to pull off the horn turn, then I certainly would have used that, but I don't know how to use that, so... Because this is the first time I've ever used Rodan, so I don't know what I'm doing with it. But yeah, at this point I think you can probably tell that there was no way in hell I was ever going to make it to the end of the Lost Chapter. It just wasn't going to happen. I mean, just so much going on. I mean, I remember when I first unlocked Angel Slayer, which was when I did play through all those years ago. I tried to fight it, and I died at the 2 kinships in verse 1. So, I've certainly improved. I've managed to get nearly 2 verses complete. But I'm not quite there yet. It's basically kind of because hard mode's hard. I really dread eventually touching Knot of Infinite Climax mode, because my fingers are going to be dead by the end of that, I think. But essentially, for beating the if you beat Angel Slayer mode, then you unlock one of the extra characters. So, like, we unlock Jean, you unlock Zero, who is the king of the Little Devils, and the Little Devils being something that you can unlock. They're an accessory which attack with you, which is quite helpful if you want it. Yeah, at this point, I'm pretty stuffed. Like, there is literally no hope of getting much further at this point. I've lost too much health to be able to recover, I think. But that isn't going to stop me from trying. Yeah, so I will point out now you've got about, well, there's 2 more fights left for me now. So there's this one with the Gracious and the Glorious in it. Well, I think it's... which one is it? Okay, I think it's Glorious, because basically you've got Grace and Glory. Grace is the fire one, Glory is the lightning one, and then when it's Gracious and Glorious, they swap. So Gracious is the lightning one and Glorious is the fire one, I think. I've never been quite good at remembering that, so just gotta deal with it, really. I don't know why I seem to manage to survive Gracious and Glorious. Well, yeah, I don't know why I've managed to survive them for as many fights as I've been in with them as I have, and then not done as well on Grace and Glory, which is rather weird. But oh well, yeah, essentially that's the penultimate battle of this verse. So as you will see very soon, as we take down 2 Jeans, and it's the fight on the Valkyrie version. So this is 2 versions of a rather difficult version of the boss, and I didn't stand a chance. And you're actually going to see the game over screen for once. Slightly terrifying. But yeah, that's Angel Slayer. If you want to see a full version of it, look at the version that I point out in the description. Now, if you want to unlock 0 without doing that, it's up, 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 down, 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 left, right, X. And that gets you, well, requires 5 million halos, which is ridiculous, but either way, that is all that for now. So I shall see you in the next part, where you'll be seeing even more extras. Yay!